Madam, I remind the court that the applicant today seeks two orders. Firstly, she seeks a non-molestation order under Section 42 of the Family Law Act 1996. She also seeks an occupation order under Section 33 of the same Act with a power of arrest under Section 47. Madam, focusing first on the non-molestation order. Clearly, the applicant and respondent are associated persons, as they have been married for the previous 5 years. They will continue to be associated persons even when they are no longer married. Madam, as I'm sure you are well aware, the court's primary focus in deciding whether to exercise its powers to grant a non-molestation order are the health, safety and well-being of the applicant as well as any relevant children. This encompasses both physical and mental well-being. You have heard Miss Jenkins give evidence today, and she has outlined numerous incidents of violence that Mr. Jenkins has used against her. Clearly, these show that her safety and well-being are at risk unless this order be granted. Picking up now just on a few specific incidents, in particular the most recent ones. In November last year, Miss Jenkins explained that she went out, and when she returned home she was verbally abused by Mr. Jenkins. He then proceeded to grab her and hold her against the wall, threatening to kill her. He then went into the kitchen as if to get a knife. Furthermore, Madam, on the 16th of November, when Miss Jenkins informed Mr. Jenkins of her intention to leave him, he grabbed her and put his hands around her neck. Again, she felt as though he was going to kill her. Madam, you have seen Miss Jenkins in court today and witnessed how she explains these incidents to have been extremely scary. Being in a position where you fear being murdered by your husband would cause anyone immense distress. Not only is her physical well-being being impacted on, but her psychological well-being is suffering hugely. Madam, you have also heard Mr. Jenkins give evidence in court today. He denies in his statement that he has ever been violent to her. However, the evidence he has given clearly contradicts this statement. He accepts in November last year that he grabbed her and held her up against the wall. He has also accepted that when he was informed of Miss Jenkins' intention to leave him, he pushed her up against the wall. Clearly, Madam, Mr. Jenkins accepts then that he has been violent to her. It is my submission that Mr. Jenkins is a dangerous man that Miss Jenkins needs adequate protection against. Madam, with these incidents of violence regularly occurring, it is vital that the court grant a non-molestation order to enable Miss Jenkins to be adequately protected. She is at great risk of further abuse from her husband unless this order is granted. Madam, it is also important for the court to bear in mind that the latter of these incidents was witnessed by their children, who are aged just 5 and 3. The court should have regard to the vulnerability of these young children and that their safety and well-being is a primary focus. Both girls were crying hysterically in response to this incident. Witnessing an incident where your father is physically abusing your mother and threatening her would be extremely damaging to young children. They are already experiencing a distressing time with their parents divorcing, and they should not be subject to further turmoil. Another incident of violence which occurred at the end of November resulted in the younger of the daughters waking up and being extremely frightened. You have heard Miss Jenkins explain today that her daughter was unable to sleep until she was brought into bed with her. Clearly, Madam, these incidents are causing great psychological suffering to these two girls, as well as the harm, of course, that is being caused to Miss Jenkins herself. Madam, it is imperative that this order be granted to afford Miss Jenkins, as well as these young children, the necessary protection to ensure that they are kept safe and well. Madam, moving now to the occupation order which the applicant seeks. In particular, she seeks to enforce her entitlement to remain in occupation of the home and to require the respondent to leave the house. It is my submission that the aforementioned factors adequately address subsections 6c and d of section 33 in favour of this order being granted. The conduct of Mr. Jenkins is clearly such that if this order not be granted, there is a great risk to the safety and well-being of Miss Jenkins. In addition to these factors that I have already mentioned, on the 24th of November last year, you have heard Miss Jenkins explain an incident occurring in which Mr. Jenkins let himself back into the family home when she had requested that he did not come back. He implied to her that she would not be able to get rid of him. Madam, as Mr. Jenkins continues to enter the home when he has been asked not to, a court order needs to be granted to prevent him from being able to do so. On the occasions when he does enter the home, he causes harm to both the applicant and the children. It is therefore vital, madam, in order to protect the health and safety of Miss Jenkins, that an order be granted requiring the respondent to leave the home. Focusing the court's attention now to subsections A and B of section 33, it is clear that the financial resources and the housing needs of both parties clearly lie in favour of granting this order. Miss Jenkins' parents live in a 2-bedroom property in Birmingham that she could not move into with her 2 young children. On the other hand, Mr. Jenkins has family who live locally in Bristol that do have adequate space to house him. Even if he were not able to live there, Mr. Jenkins works full-time as an engineer with an income of £1,200 a month. This clearly would be sufficient money for him to find his own place if needed. Miss Jenkins, on the other hand, does not work, and she looks after these 2 young children. Clearly, madam, this goes in favour of granting the order here today. Madam, you will also be aware that the applicant seeks a power of arrest to be attached pursuant to section 47. From the evidence you have heard today, it is my submission that the court should take the view that Miss Jenkins would not be adequately protected without this order being granted. She has given evidence of an incident on the 10th of December when Mr. Jenkins breached his non-molestation order by grabbing her and pinning her against the sink. Clearly, she requires the added protection of a power of arrest order. Madam, in conclusion and in light of my submissions, I ask the court today to grant a non-molestation order and an occupation order with power of arrest attached. These orders are required to adequately secure the health, well-being and safety of both the applicant and her children. Without such orders, the applicant remains at great risk of further violence. Madam, unless I can be of any further assistance, then those are my submissions.